You're listening to Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick in association with Wexford Insurances. Challenge us at Wexford Insurances 0818 31 30 30.
Welcome back to the show. Ciara Jackson of Grand Thornton is here with me in studio now. Ciara, provide us with an insight into your own career today, please.
Sure. Well, I'm an accountant by profession and I did my professional training with Kerry Group. I spent 5 years with them in both their head office and their ingredients business. So it was a great learning experience. I then spent 8 years with General Electric in their financial services businesses. People might know it as GE Capital Woodchester. And there I focused mainly on productivity, process improvement, very commercial accounting rather than technical accounting. And I'm with Grand Thornton almost 3 years now and I lead our profit improvement team.
I'd like to have a chat to you about that whole profit improvement and how people can maybe learn something from today's interview and take it and implement it into their own business. Let's focus on the cost base side right first. From your experience, have most businesses out there today done enough work to bring their cost base down to a level that's sustainable?
I think a lot of work has been done over the last couple of years, and I think businesses have in some ways almost been forced to do it as a result of the challenging economic climate we've been experiencing. And there have been some great strides made, and a lot of businesses are now very lean in terms of their cost base. What we see is a lot of businesses trying to cut costs, trying to renegotiate on price, trying to bulk buy, and they've all been very successful initiatives. But I do believe that there's more opportunity out there for people to manage their costs more effectively.
And how would a business go about that?
Well, I suppose it's about looking at the process from start to finish and seeing if there's anything in there that can be changed about it, that can be eliminated from it, that can be streamlined from it, or that maybe can be automated. So by making a process more efficient, you can normally take an element of cost out of it. And sometimes it's good to get somebody involved who knows nothing about the business because they come in with fresh eyes and they ask the really stupid questions. What we find a very useful exercise to do is we map the process on a wall and we literally draw a flow of what happens from the start to the end of the process. And when you see that visually on a wall, it can be very, very impactful because you can say to yourself, wow, why are we doing that? And why are there 3 people doing that when really it only needs 1 person? So it prompts questions like that. So it's not necessarily about, getting rid of staff or not paying suppliers anymore. It's about using your money more efficiently to flow your capital through your business.
In relation to technology, you spoke a little bit about that in terms of businesses out there today being able to automate manual processes. Have you any examples of that working?
Well, we're actually doing that in our own business at the moment. In our audit department, we have 5 different pieces of software that we use in order to complete an audit. But that means we end up entering the same information twice. The systems don't talk to each other. So we're actually in the middle of a SharePoint implementation, which is a piece of software that sits on top of those 5 pieces of software and pulls information from the 5 of them and makes them talk to each other.
I'm sure there's business owners listening to the show this morning to say that I'd love to be in a position to be able to do that, but I can't afford to.
Absolutely, absolutely. And something we'd always advise when you're considering something like that is to look at the cost-benefit analysis and to look at the payback period. So you could very well embark on a project now that'll cost you a little bit of money, but the cost that will save you over time would actually make the project very, very worthwhile. The other thing to consider is there is a lot of funding available out there to support business. And there's a lot of non-financial support out there as well, be it through your enterprise boards, the Leader Fund, the likes of Enterprise Ireland, Board BIA. There's a huge volume of support out there.
What about outsourcing? Are you finding that that's becoming fundamental to the survival of some companies out there today?
Yeah, a lot of businesses are embracing outsourcing at the moment, and there's a lot of logic to it. You get somebody who's expert at doing what they do to do it for you. So, for example, if you're selling a product but logistics is not your area of expertise, it makes a hell of a lot of sense to me to outsource that part of it to a logistics provider. Now, obviously, you need to make sure the quality of service is maintained and the price is competitive. But we would see that being done a lot as well with things like payroll, for example. So small businesses that may not necessarily need to employ a payroll person full-time would outsource their payroll function to a payroll provider. So they know the payroll is being done by an expert, they know people are going to be paid, and it's at a fraction of the cost it would cost them to employ somebody to do it.
So really it's back to identifying what the core competence within the businesses itself, and then to look at maybe subcontracting out everything else that's happening within the business.
Yeah, and I suppose it goes back to asking yourself, what is my business really about? And having some sort of a vision or a strategy or a mission statement, whatever it is you would like to call it. But if somebody says to you, what is your business? Your answer can be, I am in the business of buying and selling cars, making apple tarts, whatever it happens to be, and understanding that that's your core competency and that's what you're really, really good at.
There's lots of examples out there whereby businesses have embraced technology, but they haven't got the process right before doing so, with detrimental effects. What advice would you give to businesses in that respect?
Very simply, don't automate a bad process. We have seen this time and time again where a client will come into us and say, oh, great news, we're implementing system A or system B and we're spending 50 or 100 or 300,000 on it. And a year later, they're not in any better position. And the reason for that is the automated solution that they've brought in has just automated a broken process. So we would always advise businesses to look at their process, fix it where it's broken, and then automate it.
In relation to the growth, what advice would you give to a business now that's looking to grow their way out of this recession?
Well, it's the other dynamic when it comes to profit, and customers provide sales. So it's really, really important to have a deep knowledge of your customers and what they want and to target them effectively. I don't think any business wants to be the Polaroid of their sector. You want to be relevant and you need to ensure you understand what your customers are doing and what level of disposable income they have as well, depending on the type of business that you're in. And you need to target them accordingly. And the other thing is customer preferences are constantly changing. So what a customer might want today might change in 3 months' time. If you take, for example, the recent horse meat scandal, that has really affected the frozen burger business for obvious reasons. And that happened in the blink of an eye. And it's fundamentally turned that sector on its head. As
you say, customer dynamics are changing very, very fast. What advice would you give to businesses, let's say in that respect, that need to go through a process of market research and identifying the relevant market intelligence that they need in order to run their business more profitably?
I think all businesses need to understand the current market and the potential market for their product or their service. There's lots of data available from the Central Statistics Office. If you look at organisations like Cantor World Panel, Amoric Research, there's lots of different organisations out there carrying out a lot of research that you can tap into. The piece that I always find interesting is the potential. What's out there that's available to be won. But I think it's really important as well to be realistic about what the potential is. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword in some ways. But I think it's really important to do granular market research and test it out on people who will critique you. Don't ask your family. They'll tell you you're great. That's what families do. Ask your toughest critics.
Being part of a profit improvement team, talk me through a couple of examples, real-life examples, without mentioning the company names, of companies that have adapted this type of a process and have seen great results from it.
Well, we've done quite a few of these from very large to very small organisations. We had one client who had a cash business, very significant cash business, and their process around managing the cash was watertight. Their accounting for the cash was nowhere near as watertight. So we worked with them to fix that, and it improved their knowledge of their cash balances on a daily basis, which in a cash business was really, really important. A second piece that we focus a lot on is the organisation's structure and the strategy behind it. So we will always ask, have you got the best people doing what they're best at? And if you're in a business, particularly one that's positioned for growth, you need to have the right team behind you to deliver on that growth.
Retailers are one of the largest employers in County Wexford. What advice would you give to them in relation to, the way is eating their dinner at this stage?
Yeah, retailers are in a really, really tough place at the moment. I agree with you. Margins are tight and have always been tight, and there's a lot of pressure on costs like rent, energy, public service costs. I think in order to fight the web war, if you like, they need to offer high levels of customer service and give the customer something they can't get on the web.
Ciara, what advice would you give to retailers that are competing in commodity-based products?
Again, I think probably similarly to the web, it's all about differentiation. It can be about offering the customer a better service. We find that consumers in general can be categorised into two groups. We have the budget conscious who make their decision purely based on price. But we also have what we call the more affluent. Those are people who have money in their pockets, but they're making very careful shopping decisions. So for the budget conscious group, they will always buy based on price. That's the beginning and the end of it. So in order to attract those customers, you need the lowest price product. For the more affluent, and it's probably a 50-50 split, I would say, it's all about differentiating. So they have an element of price tolerance. If the price difference is 5%, 10%, that won't sway them one way or another. So it's about differentiating. So if you're buying an electrical appliance, for example, will you install it? Will you get rid of the old one? If they offer some sort of advice, build some sort of relationship, that tends to attract that group of consumers.
Ciara, many thanks for joining us this morning. If you've just tuned in, you're welcome along to this week's edition of South East Radio's Business Matters, and you can contact me directly on Twitter at Karl Fitzpatrick. We're going over to the Wexford News Centre now for the 11 o'clock news. When we return, we'll be speaking to Madeleine Quirk of Wexford Chamber about the upcoming Wexford Business Awards, and we'll be finding out about the launch of the Wexford Business Network. So stay tuned.
You're listening to South East Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick in association with Wexford Insurances. Think Wexford Insurances for your business insurance.